就是这个样子。然后我来稍微说一下今天上下2个半场的安排。上半场也就是公开场，在 B 站这边，然后包括3个话题。第一个话题是近期就是2月1日到2月11日，正好是伊斯兰革命胜利纪念日。那么这几天呢，就是我们正好在现在谈谈，可以让嘉宾给我们介绍一下在伊朗发生什么活动，有哪些纪念事项，以及从伊朗人的视角来说，他们是怎么样看待伊斯兰革命。第二个则是嘉宾本人的个人经历，那么他曾经常年在澳大利亚旅居，并且在澳大利亚参加过工作，而且工作性质也是非常有意思的，我们一会儿会介绍。所以说呢，嘉宾会对在澳大利亚和伊朗两边进行一个对比和讨论。那么直播间的很多人呢，也在澳大利亚待过，直播间有很多观众都在澳大利亚有过生活经验或者求学经验，我想这部分可以引起很多人的共鸣。然后第3个部分则是关于当下的加沙战争整个这一轮的巴以冲突的相关讨论。那么这3个话题是我们在公开的在 B 站这边直播当中会讨论的话题。接着是第2部分，也就是更加敏感、更加劲爆、大家更加感兴趣的小鹅通地道直播环节。地道直播环节呢，我们会触及3个问题。第一个问题是以伊朗为首的抵抗之狐对于中国和俄罗斯抱持着什么样的态度。第二个呢，则是2022年的玛莎阿米尼事件整个头巾风波从头到尾，因为嘉宾当时本人就在伊朗参与过全程，并且呢本人对这件事情有一些个人经历和个人回忆，那么这也是非常有意思的我们可以讨论的部分。而第3部分则是嘉宾到今天为止已经在中国生活了1年多，虽然人现在在德黑兰，但是下周就回中国。那么嘉宾本人作为一个伊朗人，对于中国的认知，对于中国的观感，这些都非常重要。好的，那么接下来呢，我们把大致的今晚的那么这样一来，我们把今晚的大致要讨论的内容谈完了，我们就可以开始正式为大家介绍嘉宾。那么今天我们非常有幸的请到嘉宾Nahida Porosa， 那么大家可以叫嘉宾纳西达，或者他本人选用的中文名是汉娜。他来自伊朗，目前呢正在人民大学学习，确切说是人民大学苏州分校。他在澳大利亚曾经生活工作过几年，而且是在澳大利亚作为工会组织者生活和帮助组织，所以这也是一个非常有意思的，我们可能很少看到的澳大利亚的经历。接着2022年，那么2022年的时候，他决定在澳大利亚待够了，他决定呢，按照他本人的说法，他重新认为对于未来来说，世界的未来掌控在东方国家手中。然后接着重新回到伊朗，在伊朗生活了近2年左右，然后接着在去年2023年来到中国。那么他本人的主要的研究重点和关注方向是一带一路相关项目以及抵抗之狐与中国的关系，这2个话题应该都是国内观众非常感兴趣，但同时呢了解可能相对较为欠缺的话题。好的，那么今天晚上这个嘉宾环节还是跟上次一样，是嘉宾说英语，我来说中文。整个过程当中呢，我尽量给嘉宾留出足够的时间，包括观众也可以尽可能多的与嘉宾交流。我更多是作为一个整个的主持人和作为翻译来参与今晚的整场直播。
你好，早上好。Thank you so much for having me here. That's a big honor. And I hope this session will go as exciting and informative as possible. Thank you.
好的，嘉宾和大家打招呼，然后呢，希望我们今天的聊天呢，能够是一个充满有价值的交流，有大量信息，然后呢，对大家能够带来非常多感兴趣的内容的一场直播。Okay, so do you think let's just start right at the topic, because right now is the Fajr ceremonies, right, in Iran. 稍微介绍一下，我们的第一个话题呢是关于最近2月1日到11日是伊斯兰革命胜利的纪念日，那么我们正好这个直播在纪念活动当中，我们以此为切入点来聊一聊伊朗国内的纪念活动有哪些，然后呢伊朗国内对伊斯兰革命的整个观点。Yeah, finish translation. Yep.
Sure. So yes. So from the 1st of February to 11, it's the Fajr ceremony, the dawn for the anniversary of the Iranian Revolution. It starts with the day that Khomeini came back from France to Tehran. 3 million people at the day they gathered to welcome him, which is a massive number in compared to the population for Iran. And the last day of the decade is the day that the military said yes to the demand of people and stopped the support for Shah. The interesting point from this story is that before Khomeini came to Iran, he actually tried to come back a couple of days before, but the government said that, oh, actually the weather is not really nice, and we have to stop all the airports. They can't function, and they stopped the ticket. They stopped the flight. And it's on the 16th of January actually was the day that Shah actually left Iran. So since Shah left, everyone was actually expecting Khomeini to come back. But how he actually tried to formulate the story was that, oh, I'm just a bit tired. I'm going to Egypt to take some rest with the family, and I will be back when things are sorted, as if things are just going to be sorted naturally. Like you don't need to be here as the Shah of the country, as the highest level of the monarchy to sort out things. So yeah, he left a couple of days after Khomeini came, the first day of the anniversary, and then the last day is when military said yes to people and the revolution was finished and the new government came.
好的，那么稍给大家普及一下这个纪念日的历史背景。这纪念本身是从2月1日一直持续到2月11日。那么之所以是选择这样10天纪念，是因为2月1日是霍梅尼正好从巴黎返回伊朗的时间，然后接着2月11日在10天之后是伊朗军队正式表示响应人民意愿，停止支持巴列维王室，停止支持沙阿，也就是伊朗的国王。那么在当时呢，这里还有一些有意思的小插曲。原本霍梅尼是希望能够更好回国的，但是当时政府声称，由于天气原因，全国机场将会持续数天，全部飞机、全部航班停止运作，导致霍梅尼的归国被延迟。然后呢，在当时其实有必要说的是，在1月16日，伊朗沙阿也就是巴列维就跑路了。1月16日的时候，巴列维号称，由于近期的大量事务繁忙，我感到非常疲劳，因此我会和我的家人前往埃及，在埃及进行度假，然后等到伊朗国内事态平息以后再回归伊朗。这个就很逗，就是巴列维似乎觉得我走了之后没有问题伊朗会自动平息下来，我离开一段时间事情就会好了。然后结果是呢，这巴列维一走，伊朗群龙无首，伊朗本身的巴列维政府就内部是出现了巨大的混乱。接着在霍梅尼回来之后，很快整个革命推进速度非常迅速，到2月11号，当军队正式停止了对巴列维的支持之后，可以说革命就正式胜利了。Okay, so I have finished translation. Now, I think there are some interesting aspects we can discuss about, like if you have some interesting stories to share about what happened during the revolution, a lot of details that people outside Iran may not be familiar with.
Sure. Well, the first thing I should say is that unfortunately it's not very actually interesting because the aspect of the revolution, which is like anti-American and anti-colonialism, has been gradually, since the revolution, been faded in the mainstream media all around the world. Like even leftists everywhere in Western countries, they call the revolution as Islamic revolution. I'm not saying it wasn't. Obviously, it was Islamic revolution, But normally how they talk about this fundamental momentum in Iran as a way that it's a backward kind of not very progressive, and also more importantly, it has been hijacked by Islamic groups from the leftist and communist and socialist forces, which is not true. That's not what actually happened, in my opinion. There are several opinions and point of views about how people see the revolution. But in my opinion, what happened was actually purely a very organic movement started from before the nationalization of the oil in Iran, when after we had the coup in 1953 by Dr. Mossadegh, when Americans overthrew Mossadegh. So the revolution in 1979 didn't start like 10 years before. It actually started, if I really want to say the real root, I should say 1905, when the constitutional revolution happened in Iran. But this is one point that I want to say. It's very simple. It's not, I just stop here, and if you can translate, please, and then I continue. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, sure. 那么这一段实际上是个非常重要的一段，就是当时在革命爆发的时候，1979年伊斯兰革命，那么发生的情况是什么？也就是实际上在最开始，这次革命在外界是被普遍误解的，特别是在西方媒体报道中有几点。首先是当时各国媒体实际上在刻意的尽可能压制关于伊朗伊斯兰革命的报道，尽可能的算是低报压制这次事件的重要性，同时呢，也让一部分人认为这只是一个短期事件，它不会带来任何长期的变化。然后接着，哪怕报道的这些，一般来说都会把这次革命给它标记为一次伊斯兰革命。当然，确实这也是一场伊斯兰革命，但是外界对这场革命在报道当中普遍把它报道为一次算是保守的偏反动的一次革命，而这与实际情况是完全不符的。或者还有一部分报道把它报道为一次伊斯兰主义者从左翼，包括人民党等等这些左翼运动团体手中窃取革命成果的一次革命，但实际情况完全并非如此。总体来说，如果我们今天回来看的话，伊斯兰革命就其性质而言是一次民众自发的有巨大草根基础的一次算是公民大众整体全民参与的一次革命进程。而如果我们要理解这次革命，我们需要回溯它的根基，它的根基要回到在过去伊朗进行对整个石油工业进行国有化之前，回到巴列维之前，摩萨台的时代以及更早之前。
Yes, so especially when I went to Australia, that was very encountering for me because normally leftist people, when they come to you as an Iranian, the first thing and the last thing I should say they ask is about women's rights and how the Islamic revolution was actually reversing all the rights that women were successful to obtain. And you have to start from the very beginning for them to say that that's not true. What happened after the revolution was actually, and that's not a propaganda because, like a bit of myself, I need to say that I came from a very different point of view and politics to the point that here I am capable of seeing the reality and the truth of the 1979, because as a child, as a generation after the revolution, I was born how many years after? 8 years after the revolution, 2 years after the war between Iran and Iraq, and I am actually from the area of the war. I'm from southwest of Iran, Ahvaz. So when you grew up in that time
sorry, just
and
to
in that
interrupt.
region.
You are from Khuzestan, actually, southwest.
Yes, the province.
Okay,
Yes.
I see. You mind if I translate this part first?
Sure.
好了，那么之前也谈到过了，今天嘉宾呢，在之前实际上是在澳大利亚侨居过多年。那么从他的个人经历来说，当他待在澳大利亚的时候啊，在澳大利亚基本上别人开始跟他讨论伊朗革命等等，都是一副伊朗伊斯兰革命爆发之后是反动的，对妇女权益造成了巨大的影响，有巨大的负面效应等等等等等等啊。但是这一切实际上是跟实际情况是完全不符的。嘉宾本人呢，他的个人背景在伊朗出生，那么他是在革命爆发之后8年之后出生的，而且他实际上出生的时候，距离两伊战争结束还有2年时间。那么应该是87年，因为两伊战争89年结束，革命是79年。而且他本人这样出生的时候是在战争区域出生，那么也就是伊朗西南部富产石油的胡齐斯坦省。实际上最开始萨达姆也正是为了夺取这一区域，所以才开始派兵发动了两伊战争。Okay, because I'm very interested in this topic. For me, this is the first time I heard about this. A lot of interesting aspects we can talk about. So, the first question I would like to ask is that from your perspective right now, like what Khuzestan was like back then, like during the war. Of course, the memory would be very blurred, but just talk a little bit like about your family experience, about some of your family histories or stories during the war. That would be very interesting. 好的，我稍微说一下，就是想跟嘉宾聊一下关于有哪些在战争时期他的自己的家庭对战争的记忆，还有关于胡齐斯坦在当时是个什么样的一些故事。
So, back then, my both parents, they were teachers teaching at the school. My father was an English teacher, and my mom was just a normal teacher at like a health teacher. I don't know if that's the concept in China, but there is one teacher who is taking care of like the health and the conditions of students at school. When the war started, obviously I wasn't there, but what I've heard a lot from the family is that they just started to think that where they should go. Both of my parents were actually very revolutionary, but that's only for the time before the revolution. Everyone became against the revolution right after it. And my parents were not the exception. But even though they are actually very anti-government, whenever it comes to the wartime, everyone is, I shouldn't say they appreciate what was happening back then, but because of the revolutionary atmosphere among people, even not the government, like everyone was already so revolutionary. It wasn't even 2 years after the revolution when the war happened. And everyone says that's the biggest mistake of not only Iraq, all the big forces behind Iraq, that they thought it's the best time for them to actually attack Iran. That was the worst time because everyone was so energetic and everyone was feeling so free and strong after the revolution, so they can actually make all the changes they want. And the first thing everyone was feeling that they just need to defend their homeland. Having said that, the leftist groups unfortunately made a big mistake, and they said this is a war between two bourgeoisie, and we are not going to defend either of them, and we are staying out of it. Even though it wasn't, it was like literally an invasion of Iraq to Iran. Do you want to translate, or I can continue?
Yeah, I will translate this part first.
Sure.
Also, since we have reached there's a super chat asking the question like, how do you view the role played by Tudeh and other communist or leftist-leaning party during the right after the revolution? Okay, I'll translate this part first, but you can sit on that question a little bit. 好的，那么实际上啊，如果我们看就是嘉宾纳西达女士本人，她的家庭背景是一个受教育程度较高的一个背景。那么她的父母双亲都是老师，父亲是一名英语老师，母亲是一名保健老师。那么在当时，他们住在胡奇斯坦，实际上在开战之前，他们家庭呢在革命爆发之前都是非常亲革命派的。那么他们是支持革命，但实际上在当时伊朗存在的普遍情况是，革命爆发之前都在支持革命，但是革命爆发之后，由于各种各样的事件，由于大家都知道的，像我之前也谈过，就是伊朗革命实际上爆发之后是高度缺乏组织，而且当时缺乏一个中央领导层，然后大家迅速的在民间，特别你说在许多知识分子当中产生了比较强烈的反革命情绪。那么在嘉宾本人看来，实际上当时伊拉克在革命爆发之后仅仅2年就开始对伊朗发动侵略，包括大量背后在支持伊拉克的势力犯了一个巨大的错误，那就是这次侵略实际上反而激发了伊朗国内的民族热情和革命热情，让他们把所有的原本对革命政权的不满全都转移到了对伊拉克的这个不满和反对外来入侵的强烈民族情绪上。而在这个时候，伊朗国内一系列左翼政党犯了一个巨大的错误，那就是这些政党全都很多政党直接表态说伊拉克的入侵这是两国两波资产阶级之间的内斗，我们不应该参与。但实际上这个时候这个冲突很快就扩大到了2个民族层面，而左翼政党的这一错误表态很快导致他们失去了大量的民意。
So in terms of the leftist groups in Iran, it's actually a very, very big topic. I try my best to make a very short, but at the same time, good answer to this. So first of all, we need to divide the activity of these groups before and after the war. Obviously, we're not talking about before the revolution because that's the entire different story. For example, for Tudeh, before the war, they were actually very important and at the same time a standard relationship between the government and the party. They even supported the stance of Iranian government during the war with Iraq, but only until the liberation of Khorramshahr. After that, they said we're not supporting this war anymore, and Iran needs to stop. Clearly, I have different opinion about this stance, and I don't think that was very smart of them to take this position. But it wasn't the only thing that they did. More importantly, even though for the revolution, they have deep solidarity. There was a big solidarity between Islamist forces and groups led by Khomeini and leftist groups. They said, okay, we don't want Shah. We want to overthrow the monarchy. We don't want imperialism. That's it. That's the common ground. We're going to stick to it and we're going to win the revolution. Let's do it. But the deep difference between them, they never actually could overcome and fix the problem. And it showed itself when after the revolution, they actually didn't trust the government as much that they have to give up their weapons that they had from the revolution. So even though there was a public call for all the groups to give up their weapons to the military, it didn't happen. And later, with the accusation of coup, even though it wasn't actually true, Tudeh never ever wanted to betray the revolution. Even though I'm critical about them, but it doesn't mean that they were aiming to do anything, any harm to the government. But unfortunately, the mistrust was there, and the government actually reacted in a very intense way. And yeah, there were some black and dark days during that time. which I don't support and I'm really against. But the reality is that back then, after the revolution, everything was so tough, and the decision that they made not to give up their weapons, even though there were a lot of commanders back then in the military, not in Sepah, but in other groups in Artesh, and they were helping in the war with Iraq, and they were actually revealing a lot of information about the possible coup by other groups. Saudi Arabians were trying to have a coup. Other coups were happening that Tudeh was the first one to come to know. And they let the government know this is going to happen. Stop it. So they did all this good stuff. But they also made a big mistake. So I don't know if it's enough or we can talk about it more.
Yeah, I think we can stop it here for now, but we can come back to this topic later. 在当时，伊朗最大最重要的左翼政党是都德党，也就是伊朗人民党。那么在当时呢，我们如果要理解伊朗左翼政党，我们需要理解一个问题，就是什么？在战争爆发前和战争爆发后，左翼政党在各种问题上的反应是有巨大差别的。那么包括什么呢？首先，在革命之前，各方面都有着极高的团结，就是一个错误认知是革命之前左翼就在和伊斯兰政党两边互相勾心斗角，这个是有问题的。在推翻巴列维王朝这个问题上，都德党和伊斯兰主义者是有着非常明确的共识，双方高度团结，在这一点上是一致的。但是问题出现在了推翻之后，确切的说，最大的问题出现在战争爆发之后。那么战争爆发之后，在当时特别在打了2年仗，那么这个时间点呢，是基本上伊拉克军队被击败，退出伊朗全境，霍拉姆沙赫尔，也就是伊拉克在整场战争期间占领的最大的一座城镇，被伊朗军事收复以后，那么这个时候分歧就开始出现了，因为在当时伊朗政府在霍梅尼主导下是希望继续战争，而且不光是霍梅尼，不光是伊斯兰主义者，还有很多民族主义者也希望继续战争。而这个时候都德党要求停战啊，已经收复了全境，这个时候就应该停战了。而这个诉求，这个观点很明显和当时伊朗整体民意是相悖的，导致都德党丧失了很多支持。还有一个问题是在当时革命之后，都德党拒绝交出武器，这也是一个很大的问题。那么基本上在革命之后存在庞大的民间共识，那就是好的，知道你们在革命时期干了好事，你们帮忙推翻了巴列维，你们在这个过程当中由于革命的混乱，各个派系都获得了大量的武器，好，我们理解没有问题，但是现在得需要开始把武器交回去了，得需要上缴武器了。但是在这个时候都德党拒绝了上缴武器，那么这里就是一个大问题，而这一点极大的导致了都德党和当时新的伊朗政府之间产生了大量的矛盾和互相之间的不信任。尽管都德党从来没有尝试过发动任何武装政变，但在革命之后那个高度混乱而且互相之间存在大量怀疑的情况下，都德党这种行为自然而然的被视作了他们是有潜在的发动政变的动机，而在之后也导致政府对都德党进行了强力肃清。Okay, can you hear me? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I finished translation.
Well, I don't know if I can continue this topic or should we?
Yeah, we can actually continue. Okay, there's another question, another interesting question. So, okay, the first one I actually know the answer, but I still have to ask for the guest because this is also a super chat. 感谢战地机甲的 SC. So do you play Genshin Impact? Because there's actually a character whose name is also Nahid. And another question would be like, for you,
It's Nahida, not Nahida.
Okay, you mean the one in Genshin, right? That one is Nahida. Or sorry, can you hear me? Like the sound just went off again.
I can hear you perfectly.
No, the sound went off. 稍微等一下，麦出问题了，不是麦出问题了，稍等。
Can you hear me?
Okay, it's on and off. Like I can hear you just now, but the sound is on and off.
Oh, what happened?
I don't know. Like it sounds like your mic is acting a little weird.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's awkward. Yep. Okay, so that would be the first question, whether you play Genshin Impact. And another one is that, so for you personally, are there any kind of extremely retarded comments made by Iranian opposition?
Oh, of course, a lot.
Yeah, we
To
can start
answer the
there. We can start there. Yeah.
No worries. A lot. Unfortunately, that's the vibe right now. And it's well. Let me give you one example. For many years, I know the Persian calendar, but I need to convert it to Western calendar. I think it was 6 years ago, which means 2018.
Yeah.
Yes, in 2018, there were nationwide protests in Iran, and back then I was in Melbourne, and I went to the center of the city to join other people protesting to defend people in Iran. And back then I was wearing my keffiyeh.
Yeah.
People hit me, like literally
Like
forcefully. They
literally,
hit me.
physically hit you.
Yes, yes, they did.
Okay.
Asking me to leave the protest. I'm a traitor. I shouldn't be here because they know what does that mean.
Yeah.
Wear a kafia.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness, you guys are just fascists. As simple as that. So obviously I didn't leave. That was a big moment there. So yeah, that's one example. But I also need to say that that was the starting point for me to actually be more doubtful about where I'm standing. Before then, everything in Iran was actually like I am from the generation of green movement, green revolution, one of the color revolution all around the world. One of them happened in Iran, and I was so
When
proud.
was that? 2008, 2009 or earlier?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah.
And since then, I never saw anyone from the opposition to be like in a very aggressive way. Mainly because I was in Tehran and I never seen actually the real opposition outside of Iran. And when I happened to see this, I was like, so what do you guys like? Obviously, I didn't ask them, but I was like, all right, that's the reality that this is the position they have about Israel. It's not even about Palestine, it's actually
Yeah.
about Israel. Um, and you cannot oppose the government policies. I mean, I'm joking. Obviously, you can, without being supported by the Zionists and regime changers and all the funded projects. And this is the gap. And in women life freedom movement, also I was accused a lot by the opposition. And when I say opposition, I'm talking about my family, my very close family.
Yeah.
When they were saying that, oh, so have you given instead? And I'm like, instead of what? They're like, all right, we know you've taken something because it's not possible to change this much and to betray your own people when everyone is being killed. I'm like, no one is being killed. That's the problem. That's the difference. We see different stories, we see different realities. And this is where we have to start the conversation. You cannot just have it as a given and then build up your own propaganda and something that is not actually real and it's fully delusional. So yeah, I can talk about what I have been hearing from everyone since, especially not even 2018, right after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Everything was way more intense. Before then, it was the May Day, and I came to Iran because one of my friends was arrested.
Okay, okay,
I
just a
came to
moment.
Iran.
Let me translate the part
Sure.
before. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay, it's okay. 好好好啊，关于这个伊朗内部反贼这个问题啊，这其实是一个非常有意思的问题。我们原本准备晚点时候开始谈这个话题的，但是稍微等一下。 好的，因为嘉宾本人就像我们刚刚谈的，他来自的背景是一个非常有意思的背景，就是他家里本身在伊朗是属于偏左翼的派系，而他家庭呢实际上是存在比较明显的对政府不满情绪的。他本人实际上在2008、2009年那一轮绿色革命的时候，本人是相对比较反对政府的。虽然我个人觉得其实也不能怪他，因为08、09年那时候是艾哈迈迪内贾德政府，是吧？内贾德政府直播间观众听我听得多的比较熟悉都知道，内贾德政府属于特别重量级的一届，所以08、09年反对。然后后来呢，他出国到了澳大利亚，对他来说一个转折级别的时间点是2018年的时候。那么在2018年，在当时墨尔本，他原本是参加了一次相当于是伊朗海外反对派聚会，然后呢，参加的时候他戴了一个那个卡菲亚，就是巴勒斯坦的传统样式围巾，比较类似于他在就是大家可以看直播间左下角，比较类似于他在这条围巾，因为他是非常明确的，是绝对是支持巴勒斯坦，反对以色列的占领等等等等。然后结果当他带着巴勒斯坦围巾参加这次游行的时候，有其他的这些伊朗海外反对派冲过来对他说啊，你就是一个叛徒。其实他就懵逼了，我怎么就叛徒了，是吧？结果是就因为别人看他戴了围巾，所以直接对他使用了肢体暴力，出现了这种情况。然后这个时候作为一个转折点，这个转折点在于过去他作为反对派，他更多是对德黑兰那种反对派的氛围比较了解，他实际上对于德黑兰以外，特别是海外的伊朗反对派是个什么态度并不熟悉，所以他可能更加熟悉这种德黑兰过去这种要文斗不要武斗这种情况的对政府的一定反对，多数是在有具体的事件，有具体的一系列问题上对政府的反对，而不是这种就是整体反对政府。而且包括是一个非常关键的问题是，这些反对派多数都是收以色列或者西方政府的钱的啊，那么这就是一个巨大的一个矛盾，就是反对派也是要分成很多不同的类型，特别在伊朗，你得要搞清楚反对派究竟是怎么个反对法，他是在具体事务上反对，还是说从根本上不仅反对伊斯兰革命，还有包括在巴勒斯坦问题上也反对，要求支持以色列等等。然后这里就导致一个问题，就是他甚至回到家里啊，这是一个就是这里我们可以看出，就是伊朗现在的内部撕裂，它不同派系的内部矛盾是到了一个什么状况，就是包括他回到家里都和家里人在很多问题上是可以产生矛盾，特别是关于对今天伊朗政府的态度，对于很多具体政策的态度等等等等等等啊，许多家里人都质疑你是不是拿了政府的钱，你一定是拿了政府的钱，不然你怎么可能从澳大利亚求学、澳大利亚工作，回到家里来之后，你怎么可能观点变得这么多啊？你一定是拿了毛拉的钱，就是这么一回事。Yep, okay, finish translation.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah,
Okay,
I can.
did you speak? Did you say anything just before this? I'm not sure because I didn't. Okay.
Yeah, so I want to just mention one thing, and I think it's very important. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I want to say this is not a unique thing about Iran. The same scenario was in order in Syria. Like we've seen it with our own eyes what happened in Syria and how misinformation and accusation of people started there, and that was one of the biggest I should say weapons of the war in Syria, when people were just confused about the reality, about what is happening and what should happen, what is the best for them to happen. And for us Iranians, right after the Green Revolution, obviously back then whoever was a supporter of the Green movement was against Assad. That was the formula. Like no one you could find that has the opposite actually understanding of what is happening in Syria. So this is the dictatorship, and this is another dictatorship in Iran who is supporting him, and he doesn't allow people to actually get the power and have the freedom and democracy they are seeking for. And when I moved to Australia, I was still carrying this opinion that what Iran is doing in Syria is 100% wrong. You cannot justify it, and there is no actually reasoning behind it, unless it's about the maintaining the government in Iran and the fear they have if Bashar al-Assad is going to be overthrown, then the next step is them. So the fear about Daesh, ISIS was not real among Iranians. No one actually could see the real threat from the war to Iranians. But things get changed, especially like we were very, very few people in the minority that started to actually deeply reading about Syrian war. So I should say the turning point for my politics and for my worldview was actually the Syrian war. When after a while, things were not matching, and you couldn't see the entire overarching image to be working. Like, okay, I understand what is Assad is doing. I understand how wrong he was before all this stuff, but I also understand Daesh and ISIS and what is happening in Iraq and Izadi women in Iraq and what is Iran is doing for them. So you just start to see the puzzle and how it actually doesn't make sense. And what I mean by doesn't make sense is the propaganda, American propaganda, the Western propaganda that Iran is a butcher. Soleimani is the butcher of West Asia, and without Soleimani, without the biggest butcher, Assad couldn't kill so many people and like using chemical weapons, all this stuff. You are welcoming them and you are understanding them, and you're like, yeah, of course. Like I remember, I was so ashamed whenever I was happening to see any Syrian person in Australia. And later I realized that every other Iranian person from Green Revolution background, they do the same shit. Sorry.
It's okay.
They say, oh, I'm sorry as an Iranian that my government is doing this to you. We are not supporting of it. We are not doing this. We are not doing that. And that was the common thing for all of us to do whenever it comes to and I remember, actually it's funny because I remember actually to do the same thing with a Syrian guy, and he was like, what are you talking about? I am a supporter of Bashar Assad. Go away. And I was like, oh, what? And he was like, yeah, I wasn't a supporter of Assad, actually an atheist. But what is happening right now in my country, you have no idea. So stop apologizing for something that you actually don't know. I don't want that. If you think other Syrians like this kind of comments, I'm not one of them. I am worried about my country. I am worried about my homeland. And you don't know nothing about this. So don't apologize to me.
So sorry. So this guy, is it pro-Assad or anti-Assad?
Well, this is the thing. He wasn't pro-Assad. He said, I was actually one of the protesters before things get to that point. But later, when he saw what is actually happening under the name of protests and under the name of uprisings, he became the supporter of his country. Therefore, it means he wanted Assad to be in power, to be maintained in power. Maybe later by election, yeah, sure. But for that time, he was saying that no, he needs to stay here because without him, we will not have any Syria anymore. But yeah, generally speaking, he was kind of critical of him. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I understand. This is actually quite a common thing, like among Iranians and Syrians that I talk to. Yeah. Okay, so I translate this part first.
Sure.
好的，那么这里就是一个非常有意思的地方，就这里可能是我们从中东或者说西亚地区出生的人当中，我们可以从他们自己口中可以听到，就是叙利亚战争究竟对于他们来说意味着什么。那么嘉宾本人在当时就像刚才说的，在2008、2009年参加了反对当时伊朗政府的绿色革命之后，整体来说对伊朗政府是采取较为批评的态度，而且对于很多美西方的宣传是比较采信的。然后接着，当他去澳大利亚、去墨尔本的时候，那个时候应该是2014年左右。那么这个时候呢，叙利亚战争刚刚爆发2年，然后他当时还是采信的西方观点，或者说伊朗国内其实也典型的盛行这个观点，就是伊朗支持叙利亚阿萨德政府是没有任何正当理由的。之所以支持阿萨德政府，阿萨德在本国就是一个暴君，就是纯粹的独裁者，屠杀了无数本国民众。而伊朗支持阿萨德的唯一原因，是因为伊朗政府担心，一旦阿萨德政府倒台，那么伊朗政府就一定是下一个倒台的。这是当时的整体认知，典型认知就是这么一回事。然后包括对苏莱曼尼的认识，也是按照美西方的宣传，苏莱曼尼就是叙利亚的屠夫，等等等等等等。但是当叙利亚战争逐渐推进，特别是当出现了 IS 之后，认知就开始变了。就开始意识到你这个味儿不对了，特别是当 IS 已经进入伊拉克占领大片土地之后，再一看就发现很多问题不对劲了。之前所谓的阿萨德就是一个屠夫，疯狂的杀戮叙利亚人，这个地方不对。很多在当时在叙利亚的激进团体、叛军等等，包括很多极端主义者，实际上就是打着这个所谓的温和反对派的旗号，然后呢，在这个旗号之下招兵买马，包括裹挟了很多原本的温和反对派，变成了纯粹的激进派分子。然后呢，接着在叙利亚、在伊拉克创造了大量的毁灭，创造了大量的战乱。然后当他理解这一点之后，在澳大利亚意识到这一点之后他就开始每当看到在外国的叙利亚侨民或者看到叙利亚人，都感到非常的惭愧，就是当年跟着一起骂阿萨德，当年对于叙利亚的情况冷眼旁观等等自己确实做错了。而且这个情况不单出现在他一个人，很多他所认识的同样的在08、09年那个时候反对政府的一批人，很多人都是在叙利亚战争之后，当他们长时间高强度关注叙利亚之后，对于西方的虚伪还有西方宣传当中大量的逻辑纰漏看得越来越清楚，使得原本存在的这一批老的温和反对派很多观点可以说就完全不攻自破，而且是属于叙利亚战争带来的巨大的震撼。那么这个带来了相当程度的一种洗心革面。然后不光他，很多人都同样的对于叙利亚人感到惭愧，而他所遇到过的，他记忆非常深刻的一个叙利亚侨民，那么这个人是在澳大利亚，他当初原本是反对阿萨德政府的，那么他觉得阿萨德政府纯粹独裁，非常残暴不堪。但是当他看到叙利亚内战爆发之后，极度的内部混乱之后，尽管他对阿萨德的一些做法和阿萨德过去的政策操作依旧抱有不满，但他现在已经基本上转换为就是我对叙利亚的未来感到担忧，我支持现在政府，那就换言之，也就是支持阿萨德。那么这种情况在叙利亚人当中也非常常见。那么接着就是另一点，就是你可以看出一个细节，就是叙利亚人本身往往也都是，不光是叙利亚，包括整个中东，很多人往往是存在非常强的骄傲感和民族自豪感的当嘉宾对他表示自己对自己的过去行为表示惭愧，那么基本上这个叙利亚人表示我们不需要你们廉价的同情，你们对于叙利亚在发生什么，你们对于我国家什么鬼情况，你们完全一无所知，所以少在我面前跟我同情，你们根本就没有这个资格能够同情我所以这个就是这一点，就是我们可以理解，也是我经常说，就是叙利亚战争对于整个中东，不光对于叙利亚，对于很多国家内部的民意，他们的看法观点，包括很多原本的反对政府的派系，是带来了巨大的改变的。Yeah, I think we are actually Okay, just give me a moment to see how many people are watching right now. Let me see. 那么实际上我们如果看那么这样一来的话，好，这个问题就已经谈的差不多了，就是叙利亚战争作为一个中东整体大格局的一个转折性的这么样一个转折点。距离直播开始也差不多1个小时了，那么我们差不多可以进入到下一个话题。Okay, so I think we've been on this topic for quite a long time in terms of internal Iranian sentiments and a lot of events. So I think we can move right on to the next topic, which is a comparison between Australia and Iran, since you have stayed in both countries for a very long time.
Sure. So one thing that I actually want to talk about is for the COVID time, the Corona time.
Yeah.
I went back to Australia in 2020, and Corona started. The outbreak actually was around March in Australia. Until then, it was still quite manageable. But from March 2020, everything went out of control, and the quarantine started. It was very, very interesting time for me to be in Australia as a Western country, because I remember until March, people were so reluctant to actually acknowledge the virus. Like, I'm talking about middle class, intellectual activists, like leftists, environmentalist groups, like, because I was like, they were my community. And when I came back from Iran, they were like, oh, this is something about China, Iran, Asian countries, like not in this very racist way, but they were actually kind of sure that is not going to happen to them. And like all the media and everywhere was packed by pictures from China, Wuhan, Iran, because Iran was also very quickly getting the virus. And 2 months later, it came to Australia. And the entire framework and how the machine is working there was actually trying to reverse. Back then, everything was about the lack of capacity for these people, not the government. People are the reason, are the problem. They have the virus. But then later, it was the dictatorship and how the system is so authoritarian and trying to have control over people's lives. But later, when it came to Australia, when it came to America, when it came to all Western countries, things changed. And here now, we only care about community health. We only care about how people's lives, and any measure is justifiable. Like you just understand anything from the system now being implemented to the society is understandable. And when I say everything, I'm not actually exaggerating. Like, I remember the time that there was a complex, maybe 2 or 3 buildings. They mainly Black communities and refugee communities are living there. And the entire complex was blocked by the police, Victorian police, because there was one case in that flat. Problems if that's the case for everyone, but when it comes to racism and all this stuff in this country, people have started to just ignore it. Even though before then, I'm talking about leftists, I'm talking about whoever always rant about the aggression of the police and stuff. Everyone was like, all right, that's a mistake, but you know what? The community health is important. Later, we saw tanks in the street of Sydney. Again,
so seriously,
I couldn't believe that.
Wow. Oh, seriously. Okay.
And I couldn't believe that, believing the tanks in the street was easier for me than believing that my own community are justifying this. And they're saying, okay, because it's important. There are some idiots. There are some people that they are kind of animals. So we need tanks to control them. And I was trying to not take them back to what they were saying about China. I was trying to take them back to what they were talking about Hong Kong way before, because Australians were so excited about what was happening in Hong Kong as well. And I was like, remember, guys, when they were raising Trump flags in their protests? There are a lot of examples that you can just see the contradictions between their stories and how they try to force you understand this is how they see the world. But this is actually not how they see the world. They divide countries, they divide activities. And later about vaccination, the same thing. Like there were some people, they were refusing. Obviously, I was very pro-vaccination, but there was no room for anyone who didn't want to have vaccination among the leftists, whoever was actually critical about the government. Everyone was together. This is what I'm saying. Like, it was very interesting for me because I never ever seen all these groups aligned together, create a front line in the government and attacking and justifying the attack against whoever doesn't want something that they are looking for. And that was very interesting because normally when anything happens in Australia, they have a very overused saying that take it easy. But it just for the time that there are not difficult and hardships for the society. When it comes to a bit of hardship, they do the same thing, and they do even way worse than us in the East. And they have no shame. And the left is also all the time supportive of the government. Normally talking about democracy and all this stuff when it's not important. When it gets to the point that it's actually very important for the entire nation, they become one. And this is, I don't know, this is something that we have to learn from them, or we have to oppose it. I'm not sure.
I see, yeah. I see. Okay, you want me to translate this part first? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. 好，刚才聊的这一部分实际上是一个非常有意思的部分。那么这一部分主要是在澳大利亚的经历，特别是在疫情刚爆发的时候，2020年的经历。这一段其实很重要，就是在国内其实我会说很多人是存在一种误解。这个误解是什么呢？认为当时在欧美反对疫苗的一派人全部是因为单纯的无知或者反智，所以反对疫苗。这个说法其实是有问题的，特别是当你了解其中很多详情之后。那么这里澳大利亚我们算是可以作为一个典型案例。那么首先是媒体的严重回旋镖。澳大利亚的疫情差不多到2020年3月份之后才变得很剧烈。那么在这之前，在澳大利亚本身疫情快速扩散之前，澳大利亚对于外国，包括中国和伊朗的抗疫政策都是大加诋毁。所有的各种关于典型的人权啊等等，什么破事儿什么都来了。那么最开始他们是嘲讽民众啊，包括说你这个免疫力不行，或者民众本身的陋习等等等等，导致了传染病的传播。然后接着当开始各国开始进行比较严格的抗疫政策之后，他们又开始骂这是政府的强制管控等等等等等等。但是接下来回旋镖就来了，当3月份之后，澳大利亚开始出现了大规模的疫情的时候，澳大利亚政府本身也开始采取更加强硬的措施来遏制疫情。那么这个时候问题就来了，过去所有那些在反对澳大利亚政府，那些表面上看起来是所谓的我们要在澳大利亚捍卫人权，包括什么澳大利亚左翼，包括什么环保主义者，包括绿色主义者、动保主义者，就是那些整天在平时骂欧美政府，就是在欧美的那些在欧美的就是经常被国内公知拿过来攻击说，你看欧美有言论自由，欧美有这些反对派等等等等。所有这些反对派通通闭了嘴，所有这些反对派突然全部开始 一转常态的支持澳大利亚政府，无条件的支持澳大利亚政府的任何做法。那么嘉宾本人肯定是支持抗疫的，嘉宾本人不管在疫苗问题上还是抗疫问题上，都是支持采取比较强硬的措施。但是让嘉宾感到不安，也同时是让很多人感到不安的是，这些所谓的反对派在这个时间点没有提出任何质疑，一声都不吭。你这个就不得不让人怀疑，你们平时所摆出的那一副捍卫人权在哪里呢？这就是我之前说的，这属于经典的可控反对派这属于经典可控反对派，对，大局意识瞬间拉满。而且在这个背景下还出现什么事？比如说在当时澳大利亚都封了几所公寓，封了几个公寓区，而这些公寓往往是什么？少数族裔和贫穷人所居住的区域，被基本上无条件封了。这是另外一个问题，就是你要封没有问题，你如果要高强度的抗议没有问题，你如果要封的话，通通都得封，所有人大家人人平等。你如果要对抗疫情，所有人不分你说肤色贵贱，我们一起封是可以的。但结果是当时封的几个都是属于没有任何的说是物资方面的保障等等，这些就属于警察强封，包括在悉尼街头派了坦克，表示说是要遏制那些潜在的不服从的、潜在的搞事情的人你这个就很逗了，那你这个就很逗了，就真的是警察在外面站一圈，直接一封，啥都不管，直接了事拉倒然后哪怕出现了这一幕那些原本的澳大利亚国内的反对派还是表示没有问题，这都是正确的。注意，这里的重点你怎么处理是一个方面，但是这里的重点是你这国内原本这些表示极度关注民权、极度关注大众权益的这群反对派，集体闭嘴，集体沉默全都变成这种情况，然后接着在包括疫苗问题上也出现了类似情况，就是媒体之前对于强制打疫苗等等全部是百般抨击，然后接着到了澳大利亚政府开始推这个时候，又变成不管是媒体还是澳大利亚国内反对派，通通瞬间大局观拉满，瞬间转向回旋镖，而且毫无任何质疑。那么这一点才是导致很多人在那个时候开始转向，包括很多人对于这个政府的反对，很多人的反对在根本问题上他其实不是对于打疫苗的反对，这点是有必要说明的，也是我在以前经常跟别人说这个问题，就是欧美在2020年之后这一波很多反对打疫苗，本质上所反感的并不是疫苗本身，他们不是单纯的过去那些路德主义者在那边反对疫苗，在那边纯粹的反对任何科技进步，而是他们对于政府这种极度严重的双标、来回的回旋镖行为，和当他们做出决策之后，澳大利亚国内就是包括整个美西方国内这些过去所谓的民间良心反对派集体沉默，那么这些都使得很多人感到了幻灭。然后接着当他们在这一点，在这个基础上幻灭之后，他们就会开始质疑自己过去所知道的东西是不是正确的，是不是都有问题，然后就变成越扒黑料越多，然后就直接完全转向了。Yep, okay, this part is finished. That's actually quite a good story.
Sure. I just want to mention one more thing about Iran and Australia. It was very, very interesting for me, the level of education in this country. In compared to Iran, I was expecting it when I was going there. I was expecting a very high level education system, universities, high schools. But actually, that's not the case for this country.
Okay.
And for me, I have a civil engineering background, and kind of, unfortunately, mathematics is very important.
Yeah.
So first thing when I went there, I was like talking to students. I was looking for a job to teach maybe mathematics to students, high school students, and everyone was like, when they were asking questions, or they were like, okay, this is the topics of the exam, I was quite amazed by the level of exams they have. Like it was so simple for us. And when I was asking about this situation, they were like, "Yeah, this is even way beyond our capacity at high school because even in university, you don't learn much about this." All complex stuff that you guys learn maybe in China or in Iran or in India, I don't know. And when I came to China, that was actually again very, very big shock for me because now I have the expectation that Iran is actually good, doing okay in terms of education. But when I came to China, I realized that actually this country has way, way bigger educational level, which I really hope that Iran needs to learn from China because the entire system, well, I don't know much and I'm trying to learn, but what I know right now is that Iran needs to learn how Chinese students and how Chinese education is actually working here. We are proud. We are proud after the revolution. The life expectancy and also the education for women has grown a lot. Like you can't even compare post and prior revolution time for example women's education. Like right now we have how much is it 65% of the university entry in Iran is for women and only 35 is for men, which actually the government
it's not 65%. I mean, I checked a few years back, and back then it was like 55 to 57% for women entry in college. Now it's 65. Wow.
Yeah, like it's growing. I mean, at the same time, there are some social criticism about this, but at the end of the day, when you compare this with the time before the revolution, you just don't have anything to say to oppose the system in terms of women's rights and the education for women. But still, what I'm seeing in China and what I'm seeing in Australia, Iran is somewhere in the middle. Like there is a lot to go, but still there is a lot to be proud of in terms of like if I just want to compare my country with somewhere like Australia.
Okay, I see. I'll translate this part first, but then there's that's an interesting conversation we can have. Give me a moment. 好，那么
Sure.
就是如果我们要对比澳大利亚和伊朗，嘉宾的一个非常明显的感知是在数学问题上。嘉宾本人背景，他学科是土木工程出身，然后对数学的要求是非常高的。接着，当他去澳大利亚之后，他在澳大利亚高中帮忙教书的时候，令他感到震惊的是，澳大利亚的数学水平奇差无比，而且在澳大利亚的大学里面，理工科教育内容相比伊朗和中国是要少很多的啊，所以就是原本在离开伊朗之前，预期是伊朗教育肯定就那样吧，毕竟伊朗经济水平也就这样，是吧？那么想必先进的西方国家一定教育水平非常高吧？结果来到澳大利亚之后就是被澳大利亚的极低的，特别是理工科的教育水平所震惊。接着在感受了澳大利亚震撼之后，对伊朗教育恢复了信心，觉得那看来伊朗教育水平应该还不错。接着当他来到中国之后，意识到中国教育水平比伊朗更高，相比中国，伊朗这个教育水平是还有很大的值得进步的空间，应该更多的借鉴中国的系统。所以就伊朗这个教育，特别理工科教育水平，在中国在位于中国和澳大利亚之间。但是从他个人观感来看，你说澳大利亚这个教育，特别理科教育，大概率是比不上你比如说中国、伊朗、印度这些新兴的，而且明显很注重理工科教育的国家的。然后这里是另外一个有意思，就是特别是在伊朗革命之后，实际上伊朗全国一个感到非常骄傲的一点就是革命之后，伊朗在教育，特别是女性教育，然后还有寿命、医疗等等方面是取得了巨大的长足进步的。 特别是在现在，应该就这2天查的新数据，就是伊朗大学入学率，就是大学新生本科入学的话，女性的比例已经提高到了65%。就我听到这个数字也比较震惊，因为我差不多18年、19年左右，我当时看的女性大学入学率差不多还是55%到57%这个样子，就那个时候已经比男性高了。但是差别没有这么大，但是现在就已经是整体大学入学比例，女性可以达到65%，男性35%这个比例，这是很多包括国内谈伊朗的人，很多说伊朗妇女地位低的人，很多人完全不理解究竟中东这个情况是个什么状况，包括伊朗这个是一个什么样的状况，他们教育和这个女性受教育状态都是什么状况，而且还有一点就是，中东各国普遍理工科女性比例非常非常高，这个不光是伊朗，包括在什么沙特等等，这些是理工科女性普遍能够达到55%到60%，非常非常非常常见。Okay, so let's go back.
I need to, yeah.
Yeah. You want to speak first? Yeah.
I just wanted to say I need to correct what I said. I have to say 61 instead of 65. Yeah.
Okay.
I just checked the data. Yeah.
好，嘉宾更正了一下啊，确认了一下数据，搞错了。女性的大学新生入学比例不是65%，而是61%。但是就算是这样的话，那还是女性61%，男性39%，那还是3:2的这样的一个比例。Okay, so this is actually a very interesting topic that for a lot of people, a Chinese audience are not really familiar with. Now, okay, there are two things because in China, mostly for college undergraduates, particularly for STEM subjects, there are very often more males than females, particularly for STEM. Like for civil engineering, it's likely going to be a male and female. I mean, 5-1 or even 7-1 is actually quite normal in China. And also, this is one thing that a lot of people are shocked about. Another thing is that, okay, so for so many Chinese people, when they are talking about Iran, so media coverage of Iran in China often shapes Iran as a kind of very backward countries. And there's this common perception that Iran was more open, particularly in terms of women's rights. It was more progressive during Shah's era, which was obviously wrong, but that is a widespread perception here in China. They will say there were less clothing restrictions, and during Shah's time, there were better education for females. So that is the common perception.
So I give you another figure.
Yeah.
7 years after the revolution, we have between 60 to 80% of women over 50-year-old completely out of education. It's only 7 years after the revolution, right in the middle of the war. And only how many years after? I need to calculate, sorry. 4 years later, that figure from 80%, I mean, still, you need to, well, I would criticize the pace, but still, from 80%, it went down to 20 in 24 years. And today is a different story. So that's the perception that I was talking about when I said, when I was in Australia, everyone came to know I'm Iranian. They start talking about women's rights and how they feel pity for me. Like I remember like one day I was working in a bakery, in a factory, couldn't find a related job in Melbourne, and I was smoking cigarette, and someone came to me and they were like, "Oh, you smoke a cigarette?" I'm like, "Yeah, can you just leave me alone?" They were like, "Oh, is that something normal in Iran?" And I'm like, I don't need to prove to you if smoking cigarette is something normal in Iran. Like at the end of the day, it's not something good. It's not something okay. But yeah, like it's not something that people go crazy if there is a woman smoking a cigarette. And I'm not defending it. It's not a good thing. It's not a good habit. So it was funny for me how people are reacting to me. Or Like there were so many occasions when white people coming to me saying that, oh my God, you must be very happy that you are here and you are not in that country anymore under the dictatorship and under the government that hate women. I'm like, so you mean I must be grateful? Like, okay, this is what I should do right now. Like, and they were like, you not? I'm like, that this is not what I was expecting when I was coming to Australia. It's less than what I had in Iran, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, people do not understand me when I say, guys, you got a lot in Iran. I cannot prove it to you because that's already taken to the ground, that you already have it, so you don't see it. Other people also don't see it because of the massive propaganda machine. But I could finally, eventually be able to see it because I came out of from this region. I went to another side of the world and I realized that actually this is not the truth. And like in terms of the health system in Iran for women and what we have here, like I'll give you one example. Maybe you guys know, maybe you don't, but so many people get surprised by that. Like in terms of the medicine and hormone medication for people that have like the trans people and stuff, this is legal in Iran, and people are doing it. Like, and this is something that when you talk about, they're like, oh, you are like, what are you talking about? That does not make sense to us. And this is constantly happening. Well, of course, when you say in China, 1 in 5 for engineering bachelor or master, that's kind of the same in Iran. Like for me, was different story. We kind of were, if I
So
calculate, I
sorry to
think we were kind
interrupt.
of half-half.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, just to clarify. So you're saying that for people in Iran, particularly your background, civil engineering is still more or less is still more male dominated in civil engineering.
Yes,
Okay, I
I
see.
should
Yeah.
say not civil engineering. I have to say all engineering together. Civil
Okay.
engineering is a bit different, but if we talk about power, mechanic, all other measures, they are, yes, I should say still male dominated. But in terms of like, if you sum it up by other kind of majors like medicine, then that's a different story, because medicine is also very, very high ranking in Iran. And Iran is the same as China. We have to do the entrance exam. It's not just by your average of high school. You have to actually do the entrance exam. And it's a very, very tough exam, as you guys know. So yeah, I just want to sum it up. I want to say this is what I actually realized when I was in Australia. So let alone other people that from other countries. Our understanding about our own country was so damaged. I'm from Southwest, and people are growing up in my age with the image that this country is the darkest and the most abnormal country of the world. Like, honestly, if you say this country is normal, you are the abnormal. Like, even 2 days ago, I was sending a picture of the one of the main streets of Tehran to my brother, and he said, I know that what are you doing is normalization of the country. I'm like, what? This is just a picture I took. Like, I'm not even allowed to take a picture because I'm going to damage the image that the entire machine has been very successful. I have to say, I give the credit to them that they've been very successful. Their project has been very smart. That very destroyed country, they only have some broken missiles, and that's it. And that's only the propaganda of Khamenei, because they just like wars, and this is all they want. They don't understand life. Which moving to Australia proved me the opposite. I should say.
Okay, I see. Okay, so here's the thing regarding the education and other data, particularly regarding the female education. I probably need you to send it to me. I will translate the later part first, and then I will go back to the first part. Yeah. 好，那么这个就很逗了啊，这个就很逗了，这个就属于经典啊，对，刚刚有观众说了，新文学经典案例，就是一个什么情况呢？就是嘉宾本人在那个伊朗西南部胡齐斯坦省，就是阿拉伯裔比较多，而且算是伊朗最富产石油的一个省。那么他是在这个省出生，然后他从小长到大，注意，这不是在国外。而是在伊朗国内的刻板印象。不要弹幕引战，不要弹幕在国内，房管把弹幕给管一下，弹幕杀一下，有几个人明显的带国内，直接干啊！好，在他们从小长大所受到的教育和刻板认知就是，伊朗是全世界最黑暗、最不正常的国家。注意，这不是在国外受到的概念，这是在伊朗国内他们所常见的一个从小到大的这样的一个认知包括出现一个什么情况呢？他跑去德黑兰，在德黑兰那边拍个照，然后拍个德黑兰的大街然后接着拍照上传了之后，上传社交媒体，他兄弟可以问他你这是在干什么？你这是不是想要让我们对把伊朗的情况常态化？你是不是想说明伊朗很正常我告诉你这是这一句算是我翻译，帮大家注意理解。你一定是拿了哈维内伊的钱，你一定是想证明你一定是你为什么要发这种证明伊朗好的东西？你究竟是何居心所以就这种情况在伊朗是非常非常常见，这种自我贬低和逆向民族主义是非常常见。也因此在这样的一个认知的影响下，在出国之前呢，普遍对于西方国家，对于澳大利亚是抱有一种幻想和一种极大的滤镜的。然后去了之后就发现现实并不是自己想象的这个样子包括就是刚才我们谈到过的教育水平等等。然后还有一个经典就是去了之后，当时他在墨尔本那边暂时没找到工作，他本身是土木背景出身，然后呢，结果是他当时是在一家面包房在那边打工，然后打工休息，在那边抽烟接着抽烟之后，澳大利亚同事靠过来，就非常震惊的表示你抽烟吗？然后接着就是你这一定是到了澳大利亚之后才这么自由，你当初在伊朗这些东西肯定都不能干，你一定对于能够成功的逃离那个该死的国家，来到自由的西方世界非常感激涕零吧。然后嘉宾本人一脸懵逼，就好，抽烟不是好习惯，注意，抽烟绝对不是好习惯。但是谁告诉你在伊朗抽不了烟的？伊朗男女抽烟都很常见，好不好然后结果就变成就是在澳大利亚这个应该不只是伊朗人，我觉得包括很多国内人，特别在澳大利亚就经常会有这种遭遇，就是本国人过来澳大利亚人过来对你一阵同情。哎呀，你这真是过得惨呐！想必你以前在伊朗和中国一定是过得非常的惨吧？但是放心，一切都好了。你来到了自由的澳大利亚你可以摆脱你们国家过去的压迫和束缚了，等等等等等等。这种情况非常常见，然后就整个人就是你能够到处感受到这种西方式的傲慢OK， 那个2个 SE 我一会儿读，对，就典型的类似于大陆人吃不起茶叶蛋，是的。刚才还有弹幕说嘉宾很幸运去自由世界，我没看到，但就是那个意思，你知道吧？就是那个意思，就看多了之后就特别的绷不住。好，等一下我来看一下有几个数据好。然后接着是关于刚才就是关于妇女教育这个问题，如果直接从数据来看，在现在伊朗女性的这个扫盲已经基本上就是或者说伊朗全国扫盲进程基本上完成了，就是伊朗的文盲率现在是跌到不到1%。 而在革命之后，就是革命之后应该是8年之后，在革命之后8年，那应该是1987年的时候。那么这个时候因为还是战争时期，所以主要如果我们看教育水平的话，这个时候还没有明显的上升。这个时候教育水平呢，主要是巴列维时期的教育所留下的遗产。那么这个时候，在1987年，50岁以上的女性文盲率是在40%到60%之间。所以就是我经常吐槽的，很多人在那边说巴列维时期什么女性地位多高，女性多开放，女性受教育多好的，我求求你们了，去看一下数据吧！啊，就是你吹巴列维，你吹这个女性受教育率，吹教育，你这个实在太绷不住了。顺便一提，不光女性，男性受教育也挺低。另外，刚才呢，因为我们谈到说这个伊朗就是大学，特别是理工科这个比例，就是嘉宾特意就是我们刚才澄清一下。总体来说，在整个所有工程，包括土木啊、电力啊等等这些所有工程相关的科目，在伊朗依旧是男性居多的，这一点没有任何疑问。但是如果我们放了一个更广的，特别是当你把医药这些医学等等，还有包括药理学这些，在伊朗在理工科当中属于地位非常高的，就是你需要很好的成绩才能考进去的。那么当你把这些医学啊、药理学啊等等这些放进来的话，那么把这些女性比例计算进去的话，就比例是非常非常非常高的。好的，那么这一个就基本上对，就是这些。Yeah, okay, finish translation.
No worries. Another interesting point is that
actually,
like,
okay, there are a few comments that I think is very interesting that is very interesting to discuss about. So okay, so first 2 super chats. That's one of our audience actually have a similar experience to you, who often had to fight his father when they are discussing about whether China is better or Western countries are better. But a lot of time, because of stereotypes and other stuff, so the older people simply cannot accept the fact, and they more or less grew up in this sort of stereotype that China is very backward and the West represents all things that are good. So this is actually a common problem that is also, I think, very prevalent in my generation, particularly those who actually had experience in the West, who studied in Western countries, are often after coming back, they realize, well, China is a lot better than I thought, and in many aspects, even better than the West. But there's still this kind of prevalent stereotypes, and very often this sort of Western supremacy stereotypes exist among people who have actually never once went to the West in their lifetime, or at best maybe just traveled for short periods. Okay, another super chat. Very good guess. Love from Evil Access. Okay, I think it means the access of evil mentioned by Bush. Yeah, mentioned by George W. Bush.
Yeah. We are the evil to the evil. That's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say there's another figure that might be interesting for our audience, which is Iran has been the first in the world for the continuous of 4 decades, which means actually after the revolution, to improve and upgrade women's education in the world. Like no one is better than us in terms of the pace and how nationally the policy and the entire resources has been put into the work to make it happen. Also, the 4th country again in the world to improve young women. So that's another measure that again, Iran is one of the 5 first countries in the world. But the opposite is the image of this country, which also makes sense, right? Like you don't expect Americans to come and say, okay, this is the reality about this country. Actually, after the revolution, they were able to do this and this and this, and these achievements we cannot ignore. Well, definitely they wouldn't do this, and they would do the exact opposite. Because at the end of the day, like women's rights and West Asia is a thing for them to bring war to the region. So you cannot have these together at peace. Like, it doesn't matter, Afghanistan, if it's about Iran, anywhere they can use this play, they make sure they're doing it, because they know how the gap between the middle class, how the entire society and women's rights. And I have to say, there are a lot to be fixed in this country. I'm a woman. I lived my life in this country. I have my own problems, and they are not personal problems. They are systemic problems. And I stand very still about my demands from my government. But at the end of the day, me and my government and the internal issues that we have to fix and we have to address. Bombardment from Americans is not going to bring me more women's rights. This is something that they try to frame since when? I should say since the war in Iraq, or maybe
I would say
before,
since the
maybe.
revolution. that has been the narrative they've been pushing since the revolution, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I'll translate this part first. 那么如果我们看数据，总体来说，从联合国数据来说，就是在过去40年里，伊朗在很多方面，在整体女性教育以及另外一个专项年轻女性教育当中所取得的成果，基本上都是全世界范围内能够达到前5名的。那么这是一个非常明显的进步。但是对于外界来说，特别是美国、欧洲所主导的西方媒体是非常明确的，是忽视这个啊，他们绝对不会对外讨论说，在革命之后伊朗所取得的成就，他们依旧要把伊朗打成这样一个落后、黑暗的这样一个刻板印象。好。然后在这样的一个背景下，就是有一点非常重要的是，美国这么做的核心因素依旧是为了在整个西亚，或者说国内观众可能还是更习惯中东，就是因为这里有个什么概念呢？就是我得解释一下，就是中东这个说法在当地人看来是有歧视性概念的。当地人不管是阿拉伯还是波斯人都更加习惯称为西亚地区啊，所以这个就是你如果跟当地人交流的时候，一般来说要注意这一点，把它称为西亚。那么在这个地区，美国的核心诉求依旧是制造更多的战争，制造更多的不稳定，不管是阿富汗还是伊拉克等等，制造更多的不稳定情况。那么这样的一个行为，它为了实现这个目标，自然而然，它对于区域内的国家在媒体报道上都是高度的以批评，然后包括嘲笑这种为主，它肯定是不会谈这些国家在这方面取得的各种进步的。那么在这样一个大背景下，最核心的一点就是，不管你怎么说伊朗有问题，嘉宾本人也同意，伊朗在妇女权益上还有很多值得进步的空间。然后他本人对于目前的伊朗政府也有些意见，这些意见不是由于个人遭遇所导致的意见，而是对于很多方面的系统性的不满和意见。但是到最后，第一，伊朗还是取得了巨大的成就；第二，不管怎么说，美国人轰炸不可能改善伊朗的妇女权益，不可能改善伊朗的妇女状态。所以说就是这种所谓的伊朗需要美国解放，这个基本上就是纯扯淡了。Okay, let's continue from here. It's actually a very interesting question. Is that a lot of people, this is common scenarios in China, is that someone will just take a few pictures taken during the Shah's era, where there are women wearing bikinis, and then they will use these pictures to justify saying that, well, there's more women rights and there's more women freedom and liberty during Shah's time. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you. So did you hear what I just said right now?
I just missed the first part of it. Sorry.
Okay. So basically, another interesting aspect that people are talking about is that in China, so a very common way of portraying the Shah as more progressive on women's rights is that they will take some pictures from Shah's era where women were wearing bikinis to prove that, well, Shah has had a more progressive female policy.
Yeah, got it. All right. So there are talk about this. So first thing is that Shah's father, Reza Shah,
Yeah.
He actually implemented and imposed the law of removing hijab from Iranian women.
Yeah.
And that's a very unpopular activity in the Iranian history. No one, even people, supporters of women life freedom movement, no one, I never seen, actually, I should say like this, I shouldn't generalize it. I never seen anyone who actually supports this kind of activity to force people to remove their hijab. I mean, obviously, I am 100% for freedom for wearing whatever, not whatever, but like there are some norms that the society of Iran has, and it needs to be respected. I'm not a radical feminist who doesn't consider the societal factors in their evaluation of the culture. That's not smart. This is not how we're going to face the reality and find some solutions. Time women were more free because of the outfit they were allowed to choose. No, I'm not following the same reasoning, because level of an oppression
Sorry.
that
Sorry.
people.
The mic is on and off. Like the volume is changing very rapidly. I don't know why.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Is it better?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So in terms of the level of freedom and liberation, I should say it's the multi-level element, how we define a free woman. Now, obviously, the situation in Iran is not really easy. For example, let's talk about sanctions, how sanctions are actually have a very, very, very direct, destructive impact on women's lives. But if we want to purely talk about hijab, I have to say, definitely there were millions of women before the revolution coming to the street and wanted to join the revolution. And even after the revolution, there were so many students who were studying in West countries. They came back after the revolution because everyone was hand in hand and 100% sure that they have to overthrow this American-backed government, and they just don't want it. So, but after the revolution, what happened was that yes, obviously there was a wrong decision to make in terms of making it mandatory, but it wasn't even mandatory from the day one. There are a lot of conversations and debates about that didn't actually happen, and Khomeini himself wasn't actually proactively going for this law. But the situation in Iran, there are so many factors. I think in this story, the war and the division between the forces and lefties and even MEK, all these groups, the government was, I think, this is only my opinion, I think that back then they were just looking for something to deepen the ties between whoever is supporting the government and obviously Islam is the thing among them, to show support and solidarity between different forces who see themselves as Muslim. But that decision definitely had consequences. But also there are diversity in the even revolutionary forces, like Islamic revolutionary forces, like for example the soldiers who were sent to Syria when the war was happening between Syria, Lebanon, and Israel, right after, during the war between Iran and Iraq. It's a very interesting conversation among the soldiers when they see women without hijab in Syria. They ask each other that, oh, is that what we are here? Like, why did they, like, what is this? Why Syria is like this? why people are not wearing full hijab? And another one is saying that, what are you talking about? Like, it's a very, very interesting conversation. I'm sorry if I don't remember it clearly, but the gist of it was that, what are you talking about? How about the revolution in Iran? Was everyone wearing hijab when they were shouting that Shah needs to go and we don't want America to be here anymore? And he was like, no, that wasn't the case for Iran. He was like, well, that's the same thing. We are not here. It's not about like women or men or hijab and all this stuff. It's about how we defend our homeland and our region against invasion, against colonialism. So what I'm saying from this story is that because later people are using that, oh, we are wearing hijab, it's because of the martyrs. Like, they paid the price and now we have to pay the price. This is how, unfortunately, that's the big mistake that I think the government and the propaganda machine of the government made it very wrong. They're saying that, oh, some people went to defend the homeland, and because of them, we have to respect them, and that therefore one of the ways to show the respect is wearing hijab. When the reality is that not all of them was asking about hijab. They did it because they just believe in defending their homelands. So to answer the question, definitely I don't agree that people, women in bikini in Shah time were feeling more free. That's not the case. The economic situation, the society, everything was like so fragile. And I think as long as a country is dependent on other countries and they don't have sovereignty and they don't have, and I'm not ranting, I actually truly believe in this. Like, we didn't have control over our oil. Like, we didn't have control over our airplanes. Like, whatever we were, like, maybe we had the fanciest or luxurious airplanes or aircraft back then, but everything, like, this is documented. I'm not making it up. Every single thing for the operation that needed to be allowed by Americans. Like, people, engineers in Iran, they were not allowed to learn anything about, for example, engineering, from one specific point. They were not allowed to enter anything else.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, but I think we are going to another point. So do you mind if I translate the part before first and then we move on this point?
I just wanted to say, without the sovereignty, I don't think people in bikini were feeling more freedom. Maybe together we feel more freedom. We have sovereignty and also freedom.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I will just translate. 好，首先就是需要感谢，可能算是观众嘉宾愿意回答这个略有些冒犯性的这个问题，就是关于在巴列维时期能穿比基尼，是不是就意味着巴列维时期女性更加自由？我个人认为这是一个属于根本就不用纠结的问题啊，但是我们也知道国内一堆人喜欢用这个纠结，而且经常就是你不是伊朗人，你怎么知道伊朗人这么想，或者反正我觉得就是不自由。但是就是今天嘉宾提供了一个很好的从伊朗人的角度来看的这个事情是怎么看待这个事情。首先第一点非常重要的一点是，任何成熟的人应该都能够理解，就是不光是女性自由，或者所有的自由，在核心层面上都是一个多层次的这么样一个自由。其实这个话题原本准备留到下半场讨论，不过我们可以过一会儿再说这个。所有的自由在根本上都是多层次的自由，包括你说经济自由啊、教育层面的自由啊、穿衣着打扮等等各方面的，它是一个多方面的一个综合要素。你不能说单纯因为巴列维时期可能说在着装方面要自由一些，你就说整体巴列维时期妇女相比今天妇女有更多的权利，这是很明显有问题的。那你这个就变成类似于伊拉克那个你失去了一切，你国家被炸烂了，但是因为你能穿超短裙，所以你是自由的这个就是明显的扯淡了。接着这个问题引申出来，也是很多人对于伊朗来说最关注的一个问题，就是关于伊朗戴头巾的这个问题。 很多人其实难以理解的一个问题是，伊朗和土耳其都曾经发布过要求女性强制不得戴头巾的法案。如果按照一部分人的看法说，这种法案在当地应该是德政，但实际情况是，不管我们看伊朗在巴列维的爹，就是当初搞军事政变的李萨汗那一代，和土耳其在80年代一次军事政变之后，都曾经发布过禁止戴头巾的法案，进行强行的文化改制。但实际情况是，这种强行的不许戴头巾的法案，在这两国的女性当中都激起了非常巨大的反对意见。就是你得理解，很多人包括特别在伊斯兰世界当中，对女性来说，他们认为这是一种权利，就是你可以说不管我，你可以说就是我随便穿什么是什么，但是如果你说强制不能戴，那我就要跟你闹了啊，那我就要跟你闹了。而当时啊，对，你可以说就变成留头不留金，留金不留头了啊。这个政策在在土耳其和伊朗实际上都是高度不得人心的。然后同时，如果我们看在革命的时候参加革命的反对巴列维的人群里面，有成千上百万的女性民众，也同样是戴着头巾反对巴列维的。当然，头巾这个肯定不是他们的主要诉求，但是事实就是，并不像很多人说的，广大被压迫的伊朗女性都觉得巴列维比较好，那不是这么一回事。然后接着还有一点，这一点是非常重要的，就是关于戴头巾的这个东西，实际上在革命刚开始、革命早期是没有这条法律的。包括霍梅尼本人在这个方面，他对于这个事情根本就不上心，并没有说很高的诉求，说一定要戴或者一定不要戴。但是这在一定程度上是因为什么呢？随着战争的进行，特别是随着伊朗国内内斗程度的加深，在很大程度上，革命后政府，特别是当时已经掌权的伊斯兰派，推动这个必须戴头巾的法律，很大程度上是为了一定程度上啊有一个区分敌我的这样一种考虑。然后另外一个方面也是试图用这个来塑造一种国内团结，包括说啊，我们前线的将士们正在浴血奋战，我们为了支持他们，我们为了表示自己对伊斯兰的忠诚，对，作为一种团结凝聚表忠心的象征，所以戴头巾，所以开始推动这条法律。然后对，它本质上在当时是个政治站队问题，然后这个站队问题就在当时一直延续到了今天。这里还有一个比较有意思的问题，就是在两伊战争时期，当时革命卫队已经派了人去叙利亚、去黎巴嫩，主要是支持黎巴嫩，就特别是后来黎巴嫩真主党的对抗以色列的战争。那么在这个当中，就是啊，这就属于伊朗小故事了。啊，有些比较保守的革命卫队成员过去一看了叙利亚，看了黎巴嫩，就表示啊，你这当地女性怎么不戴头巾呢？啊，你这不戴头巾，你这个就不清真啊？那把我们派过来，我们究竟是为什么过来帮你的呢？你这不合周理呀。但是接着就有别的革命卫队官兵就对他说了，那你怎么能这样说呢？我们的重点不是说是谁戴头巾谁不戴头巾，我们到最后都是为了对抗美国对区域的入侵和帝国主义来进行对抗的。所以就是这里的重点是，哪怕在伊朗内部，甚至是普遍被很多人认为最为保守的革命卫队内部，实际上对这个问题都是一个观点非常分化，存在各种不同的观点。但同时你要理解一个问题，就是什么？支持头巾派同样的在伊朗国内有非常广泛的基层民众支持，而且这个问题本质上你可以说不光在伊朗，在整个中东范围内它都是一个存在大量争议。或者你如果说，我个人的看法是，这个议题之所以被政治化，它本来就不应该是个什么很大的问题，就是你爱戴，你不想戴你不戴，你自己看着办。这个问题之所以变成一个非常说是纠结，存在大量关注、高度争议性的问题，本质上是因为西方炒作。我直接说，本质上是因为西方炒作。 这个问题从头到尾，就是你如果整个关注下来，其实很大程度上就是因为有太多的西方炒作，就变成什么呢？就变成你如果让步，你在头巾问题上让步，你将不会单纯被视作是一个社会运动，你会被视作是一种对西方的妥协啊，那就很麻烦了。那就很麻烦了，那它就是变成了一个非常非常非常复杂的问题。所以这个问题在根本上，你可以说还是由于西方目前的文化霸权和西方在这个问题上的极高强度的政治化炒作，你就使得双方在这个问题形成一个对抗点，哪一方都不能轻易退让。然后在这种情况下，你国内单纯很多人把这个问题仅仅是视作一个说是女性权益问题，或者说仅仅视作一个所谓的反动和落后问题，明显是有问题的啊，明显是有问题。Yeah, this part's finished.
No worries.
Yeah, okay. So do you think let's move on to the final question for this section, the discussion on Gaza war. Okay. Yeah. OK, so 那么接下来我们是今天在 B 站这边的最后一个大话题，那就是针对整场加沙战争的讨论。Let's say so for Chinese audience, we are probably more interested in like what's your reaction, including reaction by people around you, the Iranian reaction on October 7th and shortly after breaking out of Al-Aqsa flood.
Sure. Well, that was a massive event, 100%. Right before the Aqsa flood, maybe a month before, we had the news that there is a corridor that has been published from India to Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Europe. And everyone was, when I'm saying everyone, I need to actually make it very specified. There are the majority of Iranians, even when we talk about hijab or other stance about the government, the majority are still supportive of the government. But here, when I say Iranians, I mainly talk about the very middle class, the ones that they are kind of supportive of regime change, or somehow they see themselves in the opposition to the government. When that corridor was announced, everyone was saying that, okay, that means the normalization of Saudi Arabia and Israel, and there is no actual real stance on Palestine in this corridor, which means the Iranians and the Iranian government is going to be more isolated on their stance on Palestine. But obviously, there were a lot of analysis saying that no, that's not going to happen because the normalization between Saudi Arabia and and Israel is actually relying on the activities of the resistance. Like we are the one who is going to set the default for the region, and we change this narrative. What happened in October 7th was actually the proof for this claim. The middle class in Tehran, I should say, everyone was so surprised with what is happening, but also they were very surprised by the Iranian government response to this. When the Supreme leader said, "Oh, we didn't know about this operation, but we admire what has happened." And people were expecting the Iranian government to use this opportunity to actually attack Israel and to bring war to Iran, because that's the generalized expectation of the government, that they don't consider elements when they are making decisions about Israel. The only thing they care is their ideology and what they believe it should happen on any price. But in reality, they were actually surprised, and they were like, all right, Iran is not also supporting Palestine, but how they tried to frame it was that that's all rhetoric. like we are angry. Now we are angry that Palestinians are being attacked by Israelis, and even Iran is not responding to it. And that
This
was a
is
moment
among the
for
middle
us.
class. This is what the middle class
Yes,
is saying. Okay.
like the ones that they were like in the green movement, there was a very famous slogan. People were saying "Na Gaza, na Lebanon, janam fadai Iran," which means no Gaza, no Lebanon, which means Hezbollah. Actually, I will die for my own country, Iran, which means don't give them money, don't take out the resources from this country and give it to them for the resistance. It's none of our business. So, and it's very, very, very popular among them. But now that Palestinians are being attacked, they use this opportunity to actually say that, okay, Iranian government is actually using Palestine as a rhetoric. If that wasn't the case, why wouldn't they attack Israel? And you're like, all right, so you want the war with Israel? They're like, no, we don't want the war. We are seeing is just the hypocrisy of the Iranian government. There wasn't a massive support by middle class in social media. Instagram is very, very popular in Iran among middle class. And everyone is just like deciding to be silent about what is happening. But when it comes to Iran, they were very articulate about how they want to defend Palestinians, and Iranians are not doing so. So it's another propaganda of the Iranian government who just talks about Palestine, but actually when it's the real point, they don't do anything. But in terms of the entire situation, I should say it was a moment for us actually, because generally speaking, when anything happened in Iran, the uprisings, especially since Trump administration left the JCPOA nuclear deal agreement, and the sanctions, as they say, the highest pressure campaign against Iran, things are very, very on fire in Iran. So people are not happy, and it's very, very clear. And that's the result of the campaign. But
Okay, we can move on to this later. Let me translate the first part.
Sure.
OK 好，那么这一段是个比较有意思，就是从一个伊朗中产阶级，特别是德黑兰中产阶级的角度来看，在10月7日阿克萨洪水，哈马斯开始发动进攻之后，前后是个什么反应啊？这个非常有意思，因为实际上我也看到了很多类似的情况。当时是一个什么样的一个状况呢？当时的状况是这个样子。在开战之前，实际上当时关于说，就是在开战之前那几个月，就有大量的关于沙特可能要和以色列建交的这个讨论是大量存在的。那么当时有各种观点，普遍存在的一个观点呢，就是沙特无法和以色列进行关系正规化，因为决定他们能不能正规化的一个重要原因就是抵抗之狐会不会有所行动？如果沙特真的要和以色列关系正规化了，那么肯定抵抗之狐会做出反应。从10月7号的情况来说，也正是如此。但总体来说，这里的重点是在10月7日之前，实际上在伊朗的这个小资产阶级，特别是德黑兰中产阶级当中，普遍是并不关心巴勒斯坦的。从整体来说，伊朗作为一个整体，伊朗民众是高度支持政府，并且高度支持巴勒斯坦独立斗争的。但是在德黑兰伊朗中产阶级当中，对这个议题是没有什么兴趣的。而且呢，在当时08、09年那一波反对内贾德时代，一个著名的当时绿色运动所使用的口号是不要加沙，不要黎巴嫩，只要伊朗，就是停止对哈马斯和真主党的援助，然后呢，所有钱要花在伊朗国内，不要对外支持不要对外支持抵抗之狐等等所以普遍是这样的一个认知。接着10月7号开战了，哈马斯动手了之后德黑兰小资团体基本反应是死一样的沉默，什么都不说什么都不说。关于这个问题，就是长时间不发表任何观点，不知道该说什么好。 接着啊，再过了一段时间，当哈梅内伊站出来明确表示说我们对此事不知情，虽然我对这件事高度怀疑，但是哈梅内伊确实说我对这件事情不知情啊，但是我们非常的敬仰巴勒斯坦人民为斗争所做的一切。然后在当时啊，接着是在最开始的早期死一般的沉默之后啊，德黑兰小资开始说，主要是在 Instagram 在 IG 上面，因为伊朗那边 IG 没有被抢，所以用 IG 的人很多啊，很多人就开始说啊，这回伊朗要完蛋了，这回哈梅内伊要为了巴勒斯坦把我们牵扯进一场和以色列的战争，伊朗会直接和以色列开战，到时候我们国内就要被炸成废土了，等等等等。好，开始进入这个阶段啊，表示啊这要完蛋了，这要打起来了啊，伊朗政府根本就不在意老百姓过得怎么样。接着，当哈梅内伊说啊，我们对此事不知情，但是我们支持巴勒斯坦人民的所作所为。接着画风又一变，还是德黑兰小资表示啊，伊朗政府就是纯扯淡，就只有嘴上功夫厉害，他们不会援助巴勒斯坦，他们把哈马斯放在外面等死，伊朗政府就是伪君子。那别人问，那你这意思是我们现在应该跟以色列爆了咯？啊，我不是这个意思，我不是说我们应该跟以色列爆了，我的意思只是单纯指出伊朗政府的虚伪而已。那么啊，上述这个就是10月7号以后整个德黑兰中产阶级这个德黑兰小资群体代表在这个问题上的整个立场的变化。在发生之前表示，哎呀，不可能的啦，不可能这种事，哈马斯太弱，没有能力，打不起来的啊。刚爆发沉默，然后就伊朗要完蛋了，再这样下去我们要跟以色列打起来了，要完蛋了。然后接着快进到伊朗政府就是怂包，只会嘴上瞎扯淡啊，他们什么都没有。这里又回到刚才一个我翻译掉的一个点，就是关于这些特别是小资阶级在国内在伊朗国内的对伊朗的刻板印象就是伊朗是一个什么都很破的国家，经济不行，社会不行，什么都不行啊，他们只是单纯的有几发破导弹啊，这个破导弹只能证明伊朗政府好战嗜血，整天不考虑民生，只想着搞几发破导弹来保护自己。这都属于经典点中点，经典点中点。这个是不是就是大家想起我之前说的一个问题，就是你会发现很多类似的机制在所有国家都有，然后就出现了就是每一个类似群体的人在自己国家内部散布关于其他国家的不实言论。Yeah, okay, this part is done. We can continue.
So yeah, I want a little flashback when the peace deal happened between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
That was actually very funny as well,
Yeah.
because back then when the deal started and people actually first they tried to ignore it, but then it became the real news and everyone started to believe it.
Sorry,
And the thing is,
sorry for the interruption. When you are saying people, are we referring to middle class in Tehran or general population?
Exactly. Yeah. This is what I'm saying. And if I want to change the class or the city, I will mention it.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
And there is a very famous newspaper for the reformist groups in Iran. It's called Sharq, and Sharq means East.
Okay.
Actually, they are not pro-East. They are the most westernized forces ever.
Orientalism.
That's
right?
ironic.
Orientalism.
Yeah. And they started talking about how Ansarullah and Yemeni people are going to suffer from this deal. And everyone was like, hang on. So since when you guys are caring about Yemeni people? Like, since the deal started to be more serious, everyone in Sharq newspaper and other like-minded, they started saying that, okay, how about Yemen? So we are betraying Yemen, and China is forcing the Iranian government to make more sense and play more sensible. And now Iran is between China and Russia. And actually now they are learning how to be more conservative and how to be more careful about the West Asia and how they actually implementing their affairs in the region. And China is actually now stopping Iran to be more radical. And when the Aqsa flood happened, that was the same thing. They were like, okay, China and Russia are controlling Iranian government, and as you can see, there is no difference between the East and the West when it comes to the power of Khamenei. The only thing he cares about is actually about his own power, and he uses any kind of opportunity to maintain his power and to make it bigger and bigger. The same logic that they used against the peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, they use the same against Hamas and Palestine. But this is not sustainable. This is something very clear that they are making joke of themselves. And today, when we are actually responding to the Israeli attacks, and obviously the Iranian government was not proactively doing things at the first days of the war, and they were just talking. And for example, when they went to the Islamic conference, they had those 10 conditions for other Islamic countries, saying that, okay, we understand you have normalized relationship with Israel, but at least you can stop the oil export to Israel, or you can kind of do something more actively to make your support for Gaza in real world. And again, things in Iran was very ridiculous because they were like, see, they're just talking. Now they know what is diplomacy. And this is coming from China. This is how Chinese are controlling the Iranian government to be more relying on diplomacy and how the world is working actually. And now that is the opposite is happening. They are critical.
Sorry,
Obviously,
opposite.
they are against it.
Sorry. Okay.
They like Iranian government is going crazy, or they're saying that they let Americans know before they attacking them. And when you say, all right, how about the 3 soldiers that have just been killed? They're like that was a mistake that Iranian government is going to actually pay the price for. So there is no consistency in their logical criticism about the government. But the unfortunate is that they are successful. Like I should say, there are a lot of people. There are millions of people with this kind of broken thinking machine that on the coincidence, on the incident that happens, they have very critical opinions about the activities of Iranian government. And later, when the opposite happens, they actually still reverse what they say, and there is no consequence for what they say.
The only constant is criticizing Iranian government. Nothing else matters.
That's it. No, that's it. If they broke the deal with Saudi Arabia, they will be very critical about it. They say, oh, it's only us being the abnormal country of the world. They don't care about our national interest. The only thing they care is ideology. And if they care about national interest, they translate it to the power of Khamenei. And there is no national interest in the deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. I will actually say the deal was way more in favor for Yemeni people.
Yeah,
like Iran had the upper hand in the deal with Saudi Arabia. That wasn't the opposite. But the way they translate it for the public here is actually the opposite. Like, yeah, Iranian government eventually learned the lesson that they cannot be crazy in the region because there will be a price for them. And that will be China and Russia.
Okay, I see. Yeah. 好，这里就是比较有意思的。我们回到阿克萨洪水之前，我们回到2023年3月份的伊朗和沙特和解那个时期啊。如果我们看那个时期，伊朗国内最大的算是德黑兰小资报纸之一。就是一个名为东方的报纸，那么虽然叫东方，但是它这个算是伊朗国内最亲西方的媒体之一。 好，那么他们使用的话术是什么？首先最开始有传闻说伊朗和沙特要签条约了啊，这个亲西方媒体直接当做没看到啊，亲西方或者说亲改革派媒体直接当做啊没看到，不存在，这个事情不存在的啊，这没有发生过这种事情。然后接着啊，这事儿正式签了，伊朗和沙特正式和解了，然后改革派他开始跳出来说啊，你这个有问题。首先，改革派开始说和沙特和解是对于被侵略的也门人民的背叛，然后然后正常人就纳闷啊，你们啥时候开始关心也门人了啊？你们这些亲西方报纸什么时候开始在乎也门人民了啊？不重要，反正就是啊，这是伊朗对也门人民的背叛啊。接着就是啊，实际上为什么发生这种事呢？为什么开始讲和了呢？原因是伊朗政府终于服软了，哈梅内伊终于认识到啊，伊朗不能再这样当区域流氓国家了，我们必须啊要向区域其他国家服软，量伊朗之物力，解与国之欢心啊，所以是这么一回事。啊，接着啊，在这件事情上，实际上是中国在压制伊朗，中国不希望伊朗这么激进，所以中国要影响伊朗行动，中国要推进讲和，因此得出结论，伊朗是丧权辱国。最后的核心是啊，哈梅内伊这么做绝对不是出于伊朗国家利益，这仅仅是为了保住哈梅内伊自己个人权柄而已，所以因此才要和沙特讲和。啊，这里的重点是就是什么呢？就是发生什么事情不重要，他们预测某件事会发生，然后接着反转。你比如说啊，当年在对抗的时候，他们开始说对抗是坏事，这说明伊朗被区域孤立，成为了区域流氓国家。然后当反转了，条约签订了，那就是啊，这是伊朗下跪了，输，核心是伊必输啊，是这个话术肯定大家听的感觉是非常熟悉了，是的。然后现在的一个常见说法，特别在阿克萨洪水发生之后，由于伊朗到目前为止还没有对以色列本土采取直接行动，所以现在啊，伊朗国内反贼最新话术就是啊，伊朗现在跟中俄关系走得太近，然后呢，伊朗政府在中俄的压力之下，他们对外行为变得更加的温和，那么这是对哈马斯、对也门啊、对这其他组织的一种背叛，这说明哈梅内伊软弱不堪啊，那个就是量伊朗之物力，解与国之欢心。啊，伊朗这些行为，这个在对外包括言辞上的温和化等等，都是中国教的，这说明伊朗正在变成中俄傀儡啊！反正正面反面都给你们说完了啊，然后结果问题就是随着这个逻辑的混乱越来越多，就是反转和回旋镖的速度越来越快，所以也确实伊朗国内正常人很多人都看出你们脑子不正常，但是与此同时不得不承认，还是在各种特别德黑兰小资当中，你像这些报纸啊，像东方周刊这些，依旧是受到很多人的欢迎和支持。核心是发生了什么不重要，这具体对于国际战略有什么影响不重要，重点是伊必输啊，重点伊必输。Yeah, okay, this part is finished.
Yeah, but I have to say, despite all these ironic stories about them, I have to say what happened on the October 7th made forces in Iran work and think way harder now. They need to be way more smarter now. The game for them prior to the October 7th was way easier. They just need to find a problem in Iran and exaggerate it and amplify it and try to say that this is the over specialized country in the world and the government that we have that cannot sort out this issue. Whereas other countries in the region, let's say Turkey, they always use Turkey as an example. that have normalized relationship with Israel, but also they have a stance on Palestine. But now they cannot do this because what, what I think the first days after the October 7 Iran did was actually very smart in terms of, all right, you guys are supporting Palestine, right? Let's do this. Let's stop the export to Israel. That's a very peaceful demand that we can have, right? But they did not accept it. They did not confirm it. And now this is what the forces in Iran, the anti-government or oppositions inside Iran and outside of Iran are facing. They cannot just normally talk about normalization of the country. It's not just about Israel. It's about the normalization about Iran. The nature of the government is so abnormal. So if we want to go to the global market, if tomorrow wants to have swap or other, I don't know, World Bank or other organizations that is under American supervision, whatever we have to do is that we just need to obey and we just need to follow what other countries have done in the region to just have the development that they are actually experiencing. But now this is different because they cannot just say, okay, we can do what Turkey is doing, or we can do what Saudi Arabia is doing, because it's more complex now. They cannot make it very easy for their audience, and they cannot just fool them very easily. And I have to say, it's not just about being more complex. It's kind of the victory of the October 7th that Palestinian people brought for Iranians. Like, we own them. What they did for us is massive. Like the society right now in Iran is way more anti-Zionist. Even the middle class, even the one that they don't want to say anything in their Instagram pages. But now it's very hard for them to equalize what is the Iranian government is doing to their people and what Israel is doing to Palestinians. Before, I'm talking about 5 years ago, that was a very normal example that, Iranian government is another Israeli government for own people. Like, at least Israelis are different people. They are Europeans. They're doing it to Arabs. But our government, they are from, we are same people, and we are being murdered. And genocide is also happening in Iran, and no one says anything about it. And China is also silent about the oppression in Iran. These things now are being revolution. Like, people cannot just simplify what is happening in Iran in terms of their similarity with Zionist and Israeli government.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is very interesting because this perspective is seldom heard in China. 好了，那么这里开始就是经典味儿巨冲的段落了。总体来说，在10月7号之后，在10月7号阿克萨洪水爆发之后，虽然依旧的伊朗国内这个自由派公知媒体依旧在老一套一必输美必赢，但是确实随着战争的不断的进行和发展基本上就是自由派在伊朗内部想要干活变得越来越困难，变得越来越没法干，盾越来越没法套了。那么这里包括几个典型的变化。首先第一个是我先说最后的吧，这个最点的这个部分，是在大概5年之前，伊朗国内存在大量的一样怪伊朗版一样怪伊朗实际上跟以色列是一回事两者是一丘之貉以色列在压迫巴勒斯坦人，伊朗在国内压迫少数族裔，而且伊朗比以色列更加恶劣。为什么？因为以色列人至少是欧洲人，他们在压迫阿拉伯人，是压迫异族但是伊朗是波斯人压迫波斯人你们这是同族相残，兄弟阋墙，所以伊朗比以色列要更糟糕 发生这件事情之后，10月7号之后，没人再敢说这个了。至少伊朗没有说对自己国内进行大规模轰炸，没人再敢说拿伊朗跑去和以色列进行对比了。然后还有一个典型案例，他们现在没有办法用的，以前经常用的话术是当年经常的这就非常逗了，就全世界自由派一个德行，讲中东的时候拿土耳其当一个典范国家，当范例国家一切都是你看土耳其多好，你看土耳其多现代化，你看土耳其发展的多好好，然后结果是这次开战之后，开战之前还有人说的你看土耳其就和以色列关系正常化了，你看这做的多好，你看土耳其发展多好。它实际通胀爆炸这不重要，重点是土耳其是中东神国，区域典范这是关键世俗化的典范。你看土耳其做的多好，然后这一次开战了以后，伊朗直接跑去当时伊核会在那边开会说好我知道你们跟以色列已经建交了，但你们至少做点事儿，你们比如说中断对以色列石油出口，中断给以色列能源供应，你给大家看看，就是你们还支持巴勒斯坦人。结果没有一个国家，就阿拉伯国家当中，没有一个是以沙特为首这些阿拉伯海湾国家，还有土耳其，没有一个中断对以色列的贸易和石油、天然气出口。然后接着，我之前也解释过，就是这一步在很大程度上不是伊朗真的指望你们这么做，而是当这些国家不这么做以后，哪怕是伊朗国内亲西方派他们都知道你这个太不做人了，是吧？就已经没法洗了，已经没法洗了。以前都是伊朗太不正常，伊朗需要向区域其他国家看齐，需要向区域当中现代化的沙特、土耳其这些国家看齐，所以伊朗应该赶快的重新融入国际大家庭。结果是10月7号以后，就是你这个太不做人，以至于自由派都不敢说什么。毕竟在伊朗国内支持巴勒斯坦，这是一个广泛存在的共识那人之辈 SE 一样怪，真是在哪里都一样，这下真一样了。那可不是嘛，那确实是。Okay, yeah, this part's finished.
Yeah, and if you have time, I just want to make another point very quickly. Yeah. So also there is a thing about the propaganda of Iranian government, which is that they're using the enemy as a rhetoric to oppress people in Iran. Again, that thing also stopped to be working after the October 7th, but specifically after the terror that happened in Kerman for the anniversary of Qasem Soleimani. People with their own eyes, if they couldn't see the enmity of the ISIS during the Syrian war and Americans, but here when they saw actually the terror happen and Iran is being under attack, and it's very easy for them to actually attack Iran and people. We're not talking about IRGC. We're talking about ordinary people in the street have been killed. So that also now it's very hard for them to make arguments that the supreme leader Khamenei is using enemy for as a reason to oppress people. There is no enemy. It's just rhetoric. It's just delusion of the government. They're making it up. Now it's real. It's real for everyone that the involvement of Iran in the West Asia, regardless of what they're doing, even if they're not reacting, they are actually being attacked. So the terror in Kerman was the ultimate reason for them to actually stop this kind of reasoning for the oppression in Iran that is just from nowhere, and it's just about the governmental propaganda to stop us and to suppress us. And again, I think that's a sad thing to say, that the Palestinians have brought positive impacts for the internal affairs of Iran, but it's inevitable. You cannot ignore the fact they are paying the price with their lives, with their like everyday deaths that it's been happening. But at the end of the day, for us in Iran to support Palestine, it's way more easier now to actually be very outspoken about Israeli government and what's the ultimate aim of this government in the region. It's not just about Palestine. It's not just about Lebanon and Syria. It's about all West Asia and the entire program that they have had even before 1948.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Okay, so before I translate, so I think we'll kind of finish off this part here. After I translate this part, I will just facilitate everybody to take a little bit of rest, and then we will resume like 10 minutes later. Yeah.
Yep.
另外一个在这场战争当中非常有意思的一个发展是，在1月份针对科尔曼的那次 IAS 恐怖袭击发生之后，就我当时都吐槽说这个行为是极度愚蠢的，还有一堆人觉得是赢等等。当时发生一个重点是什么？就是针对科尔曼所发生的这次恐袭所针对的目标是完全的平民目标，这点非常重要。他针对的不是说革命卫队，或者说伊朗军队或者伊朗政府，他完全针对的是平民，进行了极其恶劣的恐怖袭击。然后这一次恐怖袭击之后，直接导致伊朗国内温和派反对派的另外一个说法破产，那就是什么呢？自由派以前一个洗法是IAS 对于伊朗不构成威胁，虽然我很想吐槽2017年就有过一次恐袭，好吧，之后还有过好多次恐袭啊，但是这个不说，就是自由派典型论证IAS 对于伊朗不构成威胁。哈梅内伊之所以整天强调 IAS 威胁啊，这纯粹只是为了找一个外敌作为借口来继续伊朗政府对内的高强度压迫啊，这一切都是扯淡。IAS 根本威胁不到伊朗，美国对伊朗根本没有恶意。然后 IAS 给你炸了一次，还是以这种最恶劣的纯粹针对平民的方法炸了。你这炸完之后，你不能说啊，哈梅内伊只是在鼓动外部威胁，外部威胁不存在，你就没法这么说了啊。对，答案也是不杀人，抗击答案也是才杀人啊，可还行。所以这一系列事件在很大程度上团结了伊朗内部，并且增强了对伊朗政府的支持。然后在这样的一个情况下，就是不得不说，就是从伊朗本国的角度，特别是从就是在伊朗中产阶级当中，但是支持政府的这帮人的角度来说，就是10月7号的这次战争不仅仅对整个区域的冲突，对整个区域带来巨大的冲击，不仅仅在巴以冲突问题上带来巨大的冲击，它同时对于伊朗国内的认知，对于伊朗国内是带来了很大影响的。这一点是我看很多人没有谈过，我之前就谈过，就是很大程度上10月7日对伊朗国内带来的冲击不小于2月24俄乌开战之后对俄罗斯本国带来的冲击。它正是把一个过去还存在模糊，还存在很多你可以算说是反装中的情况，还存在很多假装理科中的情况，10月7日之后使得伊朗国内也越来越出现就是需要明确站队了，你不存在中间模糊地带了，你要么是支持政府反对以色列，你要么是支持美国和以色列反对伊朗政府，它起到了一个很强的这种效果，这种作用，它使得内部的立场变得非常明确。好的，那么这样一来的话呢，我们第一阶段就是在 B 站这边讨论这个阶段就基本上结束了。那么接下来呢，我们这边休息10分钟，到10点55的时候我们回来，然后到那个时候呢，我们在小沟通继续开始下一步的讨论。这里我把广告稍微放一下，大家可以用这个时间先转到小沟通那边去，转到地道，然后过一会儿我们开始就直接在地道开始播了。接下来几个话题呢是比较敏感，但是应该也有很多观众会感兴趣的话题。那么包括接下来在地道谈的3个话题，第一个话题是抵抗之狐，就是不是德黑兰小资，而是比如说包括伊朗革命卫队、真主党，然后那个哈马斯等等，也门胡塞，抵抗之狐对于中国和俄罗斯的观点。 第二点是2022年玛莎阿米尼事件以及其后续的一系列暴动，嘉宾本人当时就在德黑兰，所以嘉宾本人对这件事情的印象和一些看法。接着第三点，最后一点是嘉宾来到中国差不多1年左右，对中国的看法和印象。好的，那么这里呢，我把地道的链接给放下。地道是左下方链接。好，我们休息15分钟吧，11点钟继续，11点钟继续。OK， 好的，那么我们休息一下，回来继续。好的，回来了，那么我们准备开始。我们先把 B 站这边这个窗口关一下，接下来的直播部分是属于小鹅通专属。大家如果对后面的刺激话题感兴趣的话，欢迎去小鹅通那边听。